that hasn't known me on Discord for like the past 2 to 3 years, I don't have the highest opinion on RWBY. And I know what you guys are gonna say. Oh, but why do you talk so much about it? You know, why you have to do this instead of finding something else to talk about, you fucking hater? Do you think I'm gonna find anything this interestingly dumb anywhere else? Straw Morty, you cuck? This show has so many interestingly bad writing decisions that I just want to put them all into a writing course of just what not to fucking do. And every time I look back, I keep finding more things wrong with it. This show is my Game of Thrones, my Legend of Korra, my DCAU, my Last Jedi, etc, etc, etc. Now, is this fight the worst one in the series narratively? Oh, not even fucking close. But I'm not touching the loo when I ram this one either way. Especially since this is one of the few topics that haven't been ran into the ground. So, here we are. Granted, I know every crick and their fucking dog is basically butt-fucked this fight to hell and back in regards to power scaling within the series. So I suggest if you want that particular perspective that I personally agree with, I suggest you guys just watch these 2 videos by Nemesis Bloodreich in regards to his reviews on Volume 7, and you basically get my stance on it. And here's the spoiler. Yeah, the scaling fucking sucks. But you know what, people? I'm in the mood for something new, okay? I want to be different. Hashtag different. Okay, maybe not that. So, I want to tackle this fight on a character and craft level to show exactly where shit hit the fan. Needless to say, if you don't watch RWBY, you'll have zero clue what the fuck I'm talking about. Unless you want to hear me talk, you fucking weirdos. So sit down as we take a look at this bout of lunacy. Yay, that's what this whole video is about, guys. That's what this whole thing is about. Buy my merch. Press the like, press the like, press the like, press the like. We begin this sorry excuse for setup in episode 4 of Volume 7 when Team RWBY and Juniper interact with the Aesops outside the ruins and caves of the Dust Mine. After some of the better parts of this volume, RWBY and the others are just appalled by the idea of a bunch of people working together that aren't exactly butt buddies, I mean friends. You know, despite them showing better chemistry than the team has for the entire show, but let's ignore that for right now. Point is, they see themselves more as co-workers who rely on each other rather than, you know, a found family deal. You know, this isn't Saved by the Bell kids, this is the fucking military, which serves to highlight the difference in how both teams see their dynamic. Now, any normal story that puts any emphasis on something like this would develop it throughout the season. Which is why they proceed to not develop it throughout the season. Wait, what the fuck? No, I'm not joking. They just leave this aspect on the cutting room floor and then rush the shit out of it at the end of the volume. Cringe. The most we get is a montage with both of the teams training each other. Well, the Aesop's training Team RWBY mostly. Other than maybe RWBY herself, we don't see what the other Aesops even teach the other characters. Weiss gets taught by Winter this volume, so she doesn't fucking count, and Blake and Yang are too busy stuffing each other with their bee stingers to even imply needing to improve themselves. And so, after the episode I just named, the Aesops barely do anything of relevance until the last couple of episodes. The only ones that get any sort of significant characterization is Clover, who isn't even in this fight, and Marrow, aka the best, fondest character in the entire show that didn't give birth to Blake. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's one of the very few characters in this show's fucking history that actually have some neat interactions and characterization. And you know, worthwhile screen time is helpful too. Which is very fitting since the guy is supposed to be portrayed as a bit more closer to the team, seeing as how it's hinted at that his addition to the Aesops is relatively recent. However, that doesn't really ignore the fact that Harriet, Elm, and Vine are one-note, bland, and non-existent respectively. Not much is really done with them, and all of them together either have quips, spout exposition, or take orders from Ironwood for most of the season, and that's literally it. Such depth. Truly. By the way, I'm not saying jack shit about what they did in Volume 8 right now because thinking about any of that dumpster fire will put me back in a mental ward. So here we have an immediate problem. other than my mental health. Don't worry about that. Ruby fighting the Aesop should have been a huge moment for them in many different ways. The most important of which is that they are not only fighting against people who are more experienced and skilled than they are, but they have all been taught by them and have gotten to know them over the course of the few weeks they've been in Atlas. Except, oh wait, they barely interact with these fuckers. So the conflict loses much of its edge since the season hasn't really allowed us to get to know them on screen. And the dialogue from the fight onwards is more evidence of this lack of care given to their characters. Because the characters themselves barely really react to this whole situation appropriately. Like, look at what Ruby says right before she's about to fight her fucking mentors.
Going to stop us. We're the best huntsmen in Atlas.
You were. Then you trained us.
Fighting God!
Now, before you guys take a cold shower after that Oscar-worthy line, I want y'all to put a pin on what Ruby just said here. And I'm sure there won't be any aneurysm-inducing contradictions later. Trust me. Before we just jump ahead to the fight itself, let me add a bit more context. What are the stakes, and why the hell are they fighting? To put in perspective, the whole debacle about Ironwood this season is the extent of having the tip of an iceberg and slapping another iceberg on top of it. And as such, it requires its own video, God help me. So I'm just going to be talking about this in relation to how it affects this fight. If I don't mention anything here, just assume I'm gonna bitch about it in another video. KK. Think of this as the grind for my axe, because ho, you think I'm mad here? You haven't seen me yet. TLDR, Team Ruby in the beginning of the volume came to Atlas in order to get in touch with General Ironwood to protect the Relic of Knowledge and figure out what to do next in the story. Help that old Jimbo was more than happy to give, because he was the best boy in the show. However, for reasons, they decided to hide Ozpin's secrets about his connection to Salem and her immortality from Ironwood for most of the volume, on top of doing a number of other stupid things for very little discernible reason. After all that, and a political subplot not worth mentioning, Sam decided to sneak her cronies into Atlas in order to lower its defenses so that she may strike it with the full brunt of her forces. With his kingdom under the threat of siege by the same devil bitch that toppled him 4 seasons ago, and with the knowledge that she's fucking immortal, he decided to take as many citizens from Mantle as he can to Atlas, at which time he will make Atlas float so high into the sky that Salem's forces won't be able to grasp it, or the relics, or the Winter Maiden, leaving behind Mantle and whoever else couldn't make it. Our Zeros oppose this with no meaningful alternative, and Ironwood comes to the correct conclusion that these bitches ain't shit, top of finding out how they lied to him despite his help, and so he sicks the Aesops at them to arrest them. Now again, I'm not really going to get into my big issues about this whole freaking plot line, but the broad strokes of what grinds my gears is this. Team Ruby's reasonings and ramifications for not trusting Ironwood is poorly explored, and throughout the volume, Ironwood's decisions for most of it, aside from the last 3 episodes, have been some of the absolute most logical, pragmatic, empathetic, and just all-around good decisions anyone has ever made in this entire bumfuck of a show. To the point where it incidentally made me and a lot of other people want to root for him rather than the heroes. This also blows this whole theme about the moral gray area the volume wishes to Christ it could achieve properly. And the worst part is, despite the fact that Ironwood's decisions making a whole lot of sense, at least in volume 7, they are still painted in the narrative as being irrational and wrong somehow, while the faults of our heroes are barely explored at all, because they are just the special snowflakes, aren't they? The epitome of morally gray storytelling, ladies and gentlemen. But hey, that's the backdrop we have, let's deal with it. So, how does the fight's dialogue represent this intriguing conflict?
You were. Then you trained.
Shut the fuck up!
No. Remember what I said earlier. That one's for later.
Come on, Harriet! We're playing right into Salem's hands! You know we need to be working together!
Oh, don't give me that crap. I had you kids pegged right from the start.
What the hell do you even mean by that? Also, is that really all you're going to say to them, Harriet? You're not even going to argue why what they are doing here is wrong in the situation? Like, you seem in way too much of a hurry to fight these kids. Which, hell, I don't blame you. In fact, I wouldn't even be mad at it if there was at least one person among these nitwits who actually believes in what Ironwood is doing beyond just following orders. But more on that in a minute.
If you come peacefully, we won't hurt you.
Speak for yourself. They betrayed us.
You're betraying the people you've sworn to protect.
Good God, that line read. I could go into an elementary school play to find better acting than that. Then again, Blake has always been the weakest in that area of the four in my opinion, so fuck me for expecting shit to change in 7 years. And just like that, Discount Queen Latifah goes off the deep end. Best forces in Atlas, people. They probably would have won the fight right fucking there if it hadn't been for that shit. Hell, Blake could have used her semblance to get out of Elm's grip there, but nope, let's make Elm as dumb as she is thick instead. Like, has she always been a bit rambunctious? Yeah, but I don't think there was enough in the volume to say that she would react this way to a weak-ass roast like that. Also, gotta love how Elm is more mad at their betrayal as if it's such a huge loss rather than the actual situation at hand. You know that your whole country is about to become Destiny Islands in a few minutes, and none of these douchebags have any meaningful plan, so you might want to bring that up? And also, wait, what the fuck? What are you doing, Vine, you walking toothpaste motherfucker? Why the hell didn't you grab Blake the second Elm let go, instead of doing a go-go gadget? Are you trying to lose, or do you just want to be this fight's main beatdown attraction that much? Oy vey, next.
I know you sneeze are used to getting what you want, but it's time to let this one go.
Now where to fucking begin with this bullshit? Yes, Marrow, the guy who up to this very point has one of his very few defined character traits being incredibly tolerant despite appearances and non-judgmental unless given confirmation, is roasting Weiss for being a rich white goyle, you know, instead of, I don't know, tell her exactly why what she and the others are doing is wrong, that they don't have a plan, that if they hesitate in this instance, they could literally lose everything? No? Okay.
This is my home, and I'm not giving it up without a fight.
Wow. Just wow. This line ages so much like the finest of crusty body pillows because of this volume and the next. I guess Whitley isn't part of this very home you're protecting here? I mean, at least until he calls someone on the fucking phone, just haircut.
Marrow, cut the crap, will you?
I'm trying to arrest her, not kill her, Hair. You're being excessive.
It's not excessive if it's necessary.
How is she being excessive at all? Marrow's apprehension here just makes so little sense to me. He hasn't even seen what Harriet has done this whole time. What he should have said here was that Harriet should keep a cool head in this battle. Oh, and I love how as soon as Ruby fucking leaves, she goes after her as if helping her fucking teammate take down the single member right in front of her wouldn't be a quick way to gain an edge in this fight. Fucking failures all around, you motherfuckers deserve to lose. For those of you who've missed my sarcasm earlier, yeah, that was your own fault. But yeah, no need to review. I believe you guys understand why this fight's dialogue is just hat garbage. That said, don't think we're nearly done yet. There's bigger fish to catch here, so I'll need y'all to keep up, because this shit is even worse when taking into account the rest of the volume. See, the main ideas that volumes 7 and 8 wish to drive home here are how extreme situations can drive people, some of which who are even on the same side, to do what they believe is right, but they won't always coincide because of how they view and value the consequences. A nigh unstoppable force like Salem can bring up a lot of questions about what the cast would be willing to do to stop her, if they would be willing to do anything at all. Hard choices must be made, consequences need to be managed, and alliances must be questioned. Throughout Volume 7 especially, but both volumes as well, it asks the cast and the audience this very daunting question. Would you preserve as much of your ideals as possible and risk everything to come up with a solution that helps everyone? Or compromise your morals to pragmatically stop or delay something that may take away everything you know? Does the ends justify the means? You know, that fancy crap. All excellent philosophical questions that this show does absolute jack fucking dick to explore. As I've bitched about for 3 minutes, the dialogue on its own would be enough to be classified as mental warfare, but it's even worse when you realize they wasted their last chance to use this as a culmination of many of these ideas brought up during the season. Instead of having any, if not one of the Aesops even bother to explain why what Team RWBY are doing is wrong, they hulk out over the betrayal and basically get called Ironwood's mutts, instead of anything actual substantive being explored during the fight. Which wouldn't be an issue if these characters were explored much throughout the volume, but that bridge already got burnt down, so instead let's stick to the mindless tools argument, shall we? To anyone like me who is on the side of criticizing the show, this pattern might be very, very familiar to you. Throughout the series, the writers always have certain ideas they want to convey in the abstract, the ideal, but send entirely different ones when actually putting it down pen and paper. And this shit is exhibit fucking S-class. With the themes expressed by the volume as I've explained them to you so far, it would make immense amount of sense to have one or even two of the members of the Ops help bring them to the forefront somehow, pointing out the contradictions in what Team RWBY are doing and force them to face the difficult questions that would follow them towards the next volume. But that barely even happens because they weren't fleshed out enough. On the flip side, Ironwood engages with these aspects directly throughout Volume 7. He explains exactly why he is doing what he's doing in almost every scene we see him in, and all of his actions make complete sense. With all of that being the case, he's the only one who even has a plan to prevent Atlas's destruction, while Team RWBY only has vague platitudes about it being wrong, because yeah, that's going to help. Let's preach to the massive devil army and shoot it until it goes away, like it's Shin Megami Tensei. Wake me up from this hell. This is on top of the fact that, again, they've been incredibly stupid throughout the volume. So the fact that we are supposed to be on their side and they still manage to win despite them clearly not deserving it makes this shit even worse. And again, the ramifications is dog shit, but hey, another video another time. You people understand. And you wanna know something? You know this whole freaking teamwork bullshit the show is trying to shove down your fucking cooter? Yeah, that boils my piss too. Let me paint this picture for you people, okay? Let's MC Escher this bullshit. In the first 3 volumes, it's safe to say that Team RWBY were together in Beacon for about a few months, right? And most of their major fights feature very little actual teamwork in their end, other than a couple of team attacks per season, and of course the first round of Vile Festival, which is probably the only time other than the first few episodes where they do so consistently. The rest of the time, they're either fighting alone or are fighting alone while in the same space as each other. The Avengers, they are not, which is unfortunate because I could really use some Robert Downey Jr. in this bitch. But we all can't have everything we want, can we? So then after the fall of Beacon, the team was separated from each other for 6 to 8 months. Don't get me started. They got back together in Volume 5, with Volume 6 starting around 2 weeks after that. They're back in sync with each other apparently for another 2 months up to where this fight takes place. So technically speaking, Team RWBY have only been together as an actual team for about a year and a half, shorter than the theoretical timeline of the show itself. Oh, and by the way, this is me basically imagining this shit in my head, because apparently the concept of fucking time, much like the concept of consistent writing, is a goddamn game theory. The point is, we're supposed to believe that these fucks, who have only been together as a team for such a short amount of time, won against trained military officers with higher experience, simply because their teamwork is just so motherfucking magic. See, this is where I need to file for sexual harassment, because, Rooster Teeth? You're pulling my dick right now, and I did not consent. See, I know your flagship series also had walking lobotomies for main characters, but I give y'all credit for that shit because it was used for their progression, not my depression. Needless to say, call this a Blizzard game, cause I ain't buying that shit. Let's get back to business. Our heroes only used teamwork a grand total of 3 times in this fight. Ruby herself intercepted an attack on Weiss from Marrow, and instead of helping out her closest teammate, she just dips. Lovely. Despite being in the same room as each other, Bumble Bitches only used teamwork at the very end of the fight. And because I've proven myself to be such a big fan of this entire thing, let me give y'all the play-by-play real quick. Wacky waving douchebag over here yeets a rocket Yang, who then loads it with about a dozen bombs, sending said rock to Blake, who then kicks the rocket Vine, who backhands it before grabbing Blake, revealing it to be a Shao clone with the bombs inside it. And before you can comprehend how in the holy fuck did Blake shoved all those bombs up her ass in the time it took her to make a single kick, the bombs explode in front of Vine, who then gets propelled forward and gets into this sick combo finisher by Yang, with Elm doing absolutely nothing in this whole sequence. Oh, and then there's this shit.
Now comes the part where we throw our heads back and laugh. Ready?
If the point was supposed to be that Team Ruby's bond or training is what made them win, then I am sorry, but this was not the way to do it. Most of the team didn't consistently work together in order to take down overwhelming odds. You know, like how a good show would do it. Instead, the antagonists need to actively nerf their brain cells in order for them to win. Which would be fine if they were established as stupid and ended that way, but that clearly didn't happen. And any mistake that they made comes off less like believable character flaws, and more like Miles and Carrie pulling the goddamn strings. So no, the Aesop's being conflicted argument doesn't work either. Granted, it makes sense for these guys to have different views on the whole issue, but what doesn't make sense is how Team Ruby are so laser focused on fighting them with little to no internal conflict of their own. Oh sure, Ruby tries to convince Harriet, but fuck you if you think that everybody else was trying to. In fact, they're in a huge hurry to fuck them up here, which finally brings us to this verbal cancer of a line.
You were. Then you trained us.
So here's the problem. The show tries to justify them being this strong with the short montage of training we see in episode 5, and basically call it a day. They just say that the team's stronger and that's the end of it, and you gotta deal with it. Even though, other than Weiss, and maybe Ruby's semblance I suppose, there's no visual indication that they've gotten any better than they already were. Now, normally I am a very merciful god, so I would have forgiven this cringe fest of a line if it weren't for one teeny tiny little detail. Notice how none of the main team has had their ore broken this entire fucking time. At most, Blake had hers shimmer a tiny bit, but doesn't deter from running into the action the way she normally does. But that's beside the point. The point is, these cunts just mollywop the best team in the country, the personal guard of General fucking Ironwood, with years of training and experience behind them, their final boss of the entire volume, and their hair doesn't even look fucking dirty after all that. No broken ores, no bruises, and shit, the bitches aren't even tired after that shit, despite them not doing anything else for the rest of the volume. What in the absolute fuck? You see, usually in a good action series, when there is a demonstrable victory like this on the good guy side, it's the result of careful planning and rewarding the viewer for paying attention to established mechanics of the series. You pay attention to Ruby, and you get brain cancer.
I'm not good at a lot of memory-related things.
This guy is fucking stupid!
There's no tension, no ideological struggle, no character assessment, nothing. It's just our main characters dunking on people who are slightly tougher than fucking Grimm without any hint of remorse, hesitation, or conflict. And you might think that would pretty much be all the issues I could bring up for this fight, but oh no. My life is a deeper hell than this. Because apparently our tooth-chicken gods graced us with some added context in Volume 8. Continuing the tradition that I would like to call Yandere Deb Syndrome, where everything they add makes things much, much worse. Exhibit A.
So your first time losing to us wasn't enough?
We were holding back.
What the fuck do you mean holding back? The meaning of holding back in the show's backwards-ass universe basically constitutes not killing someone after their aura goes to shit, and that's literally it. Post-Volume 3, when you break someone's aura, they either get knocked the fuck out or are very, very weakened. Meaning all the Aesops needed to do was exactly what Team Ruby and every other non-villain character has done. The very thing Ironwood asked him to do right before this dumbass fight even happened. Just beat these guys up and cuff them like you were supposed to. In fact, given how pissed off Harriet and Elm were, I highly doubt they were hiding their fucking power levels. I mean, fuck, one of them, Elm tried to shoot a fucking missile launcher at Yang's face. And you are telling me that they were holding back. And don't even get me started with Ren's most recent explanation.
Why you lost against Team Ruby. You try to fight how you feel about each other, so you'll never truly work as a team.
Well, he's fairly intelligent. He's full of shit!
Because this just proves how underdeveloped the characters were in the previous season. Instead of us, the audience, getting to know these people and then witnessing during the fight as they disconnect and acting irrationally, the show literally tells us what's going on with development that was long overdue. And as I painstakingly bitched about for 20 minutes, it still falls flat even if this line made more sense. And this wasn't even the first time they made Ren do this corny ass shit. The continuous Team Ruby jerk-off session about their teamwork is just the icing on this shit cake, by the way. Oh yeah, the 4 characters who rarely ever interact outside their fucking pairings are the bestest team ever for whatever reason. It's like the dumb anti-adult browbeating in Volume 6, but in fight form. Fucking lame. Which is even more insulting since this whole thing is practically Team Ruby's fault, and you'd think there'd be a bit more of a tragic undertone to this fight. But no, the music soars like a Travis Scott concert as Team Ruby beat up the Aesops, who are just jobbers at this point. And that isn't even the worst part. The worst part is that the Aesops could have ended the fight before it even fucking started because of Mero's semblance. I'm just showing you the scene right now as I'm talking about this. Look at it. Witness this scene and no goddamn pain. As shown in Volume 8, this fake Lugosi motherfucker can hold several people, many of which around his fucking weight class in place for possibly minutes at a time, which would be enough for his companions to tie and bound these fuckwits in place. And before I hear the whole Mero didn't want to hurt them crap, slowing them and capturing them would have been the best way to de-escalate the situation with little harm, and would give them enough time to make preparations for Salem coming to fucking annihilate them. Do I have an issue with some contrivances in order for a good fight scene to happen? Not really, but again, I've been telling y'all, this fight is so full of holes other than that one that you can basically buy it on Subway. There's practically no excuse for him not to do this other than for this fight to even happen, which would only work if A, the fight was any good, and B, if Ruby was still a dumb fun action show, and we kept moving forward from that 5 years ago. If a mountain of poorly constructed elements are needed to make your story or plot point happen, it's a failure, enjoyable or not. Sorry, not sorry. And someone in the writer's room, if they weren't on crunch, should have fixed it. Which brings us to how I would fix this fight, and And hold on to your seats, ladies and gentlemen, because this is like $1 million big brain, 3000 IQ idea here, alright? It starts with making a whole other video. Look, guys, the shit is long enough as it is, and this subject's been sitting in my head rent-free for almost 2 years now. Volume 9's around the corner and I got bigger fish to fry. So why did I bother with any of this? Well, aside from staking my claim here as a critic of this show, I believe that a fight or a scene in relation to a series can be a story in of itself. You know, a picture's worth 1,000 words and, you know, all that flowery bullshit. It says a lot about the priorities of the people who made it, especially this way, regardless of all the potential that was put into it. Without getting into RT as a company, cause ain't nobody got time for that shit, the writers are in an endless cycle of undercutting their own success, producing mediocrity because they always want to have it both ways. They want to put these characters in a position where they have to think and understand the moral implications of their actions, but don't fully commit to it for more than 2 minutes at a time. They want Team RWBY to show their progress as huntsmen, but without making the fight really challenging. Want a scenario where the team questions whether they're right or wrong? Well, fuck you, we'll do it in the most vague way possible. Oh, and the bad dialogue? Yeah, that shit's a bonus. It's the power of zero in mocap. They always end up back at square one. Now imagine this shit just repeated ad nauseum with pretty much every single plot point this show has ever done. Bada bing, bada boom, there you go. You got fan fiction with a budget. This fight probably has some of the most amount of style out of pretty much any of the fights that were in the series after Volume 3. The substance, however, well, at this point, you tell me, people. And this happens over and over and over and over again before and after this point. If that ain't lunacy, I don't know what is. But hey, there might be a chance that I'm wrong about this. But at least I know where I'm standing. And now, so do you. Welcome to my world. To me, this show is about as backwards as Harriet's hairline. And unfortunately, that wasn't intentional. Later.